So I told the officer, look, sir, we wouldn't do anything to cause trouble out here. I'm sure it's just some big misunderstanding. I calmed the situation down. The situation was over. The guy was like, you know what, I appreciate you being so cooperative. Your friend was trying to go in the girls' bathroom, just tell him you can't do that. You guys can come back whenever you want. It ended nicely. Police officer, you guys can go, take care of your friend at the hospital. So I'm walking away, and this is where everybody's face is gonna, this is where I even feel like I'm lying, because I truly still can't believe it. I'm walking away, and someone grabs me and throws me against a light pole on West 6th. And I'm thinking, hey, it's one of my football buddies from college being, like a meathead, being all rough and throwing me against, I was just getting ready to turn around and be like, hey, I don't have time for this, man, I gotta go to the hospital, And I turn around to a police officer with the most sinister look on his face, evil look on his face, pushing me against the pole, saying, oh, you think you're effing important? I'm not going to swear, but, he's very, very vulgar with me, very belligerent with me, throwing me against the pole, and he's just pushing me and jabbing me against the pole. My girlfriend's right there, immediately starts hysterically crying, and he's just pushing me into the pole, and I'm just like, I'm utterly confused. I have no idea why this guy grabbed me. I have no idea. The first thing he says when he throws me against the pole is, oh, you want to put your hands on a cop? I'm like, and I'm looking at him, I was like, sir, I didn't touch you. So I'm immediately trying to go to bat for myself, I'm trying to defend myself. I have my hands up. Police officer automatically grabs my hand, bends it behind my back. I had a surgically repaired shoulder in high school. And then he takes it and starts bending it behind my back with his left hand. So he's facing me, and he's bending my arm behind my back, just bending it. It has this look on his face like, oh, you think you're important? Oh, you think you're nothing but a little piece of shit? You're nothing. Just rattling off all these things just to get me to retaliate. I know that's what he wanted me to do. So I didn't retaliate. I kept my composure, mainly because my girlfriend was there crying, I did everything I could to try to keep my composure. Now, keep in mind, my friend Chuck Chukwueze, as soon as I got grabbed, he tried to intervene. The officer who he initially had the altercation with came and punched him in the face, put him in handcuffs, big ordeal. And you can imagine the ordeal that's going on at this point. There's officers converging on me. There's officers converging on my friend. I come from the worst part of Tampa, Florida. And I know what happens when cops get in a group. From where I grew up. I was like, something bad is about to happen here. So, I'm immediately starting to calm down. It's getting out of control fast. He's bending my arm further and further back. He took out his handcuffs at this point, opened them up, and he's jabbing them into my sternum. And he's just jabbing the handcuffs into my chest, jabbing them into my chest. And, just saying, oh, cursing at me and everything. And so, just to make a long story short, I went to John Carroll with the chief of police's son, Mike McGrath's son. So I pulled the car. I had to. I thought I was going to die. I literally thought my friend was going to get shot, I was going to get shot, and my girlfriend was going to witness it all. So I was like, look, I was like, get your hands off me. I know the chief of police. That's what I said. I have his cell phone number in my phone right now. And then his demeanor completely changed. He started to calm down. He pulled his handcuffs back. The police that were around started to relax a little bit. He's like, and then, he was like kind of caught off guard by that. He was like, oh, so are you gonna call the chief to bail you out? And, he's kind of, replied like that. And I was just like, look, man, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I was like, let's just walk away from this now. And he took my ID, he did the usual intimidation routine where he takes your ID and he takes your name and all this stuff. And my girlfriend's crying, and Chuck's in handcuffs. Chuck was going to jail for disorderly conduct, and that, and then a bunch of stuff happened after that, but it's really not important. The important part is that I went to the emergency room and I was sitting there, and being someone where I'm from, I'm sure there's someone in the room who can relate. I wasn't supposed to be where I'm at. I'm not supposed to be a college graduate. I'm not supposed to be, up here, like, talking to you guys. Excuse me.
Yes, you are. Yes,
you are. But I was broken. I was broken by that situation. because here I am, I come from a family of criminals, a family of, I had every excuse to go the wrong way, but I chose to take the tough route, go to school, be called a schoolboy by all all the thugs in the neighborhood, like play football, be right, and I still get treated like a criminal, and I was broken at that point. I can't even tell you the thoughts that were going through my mind. I was thinking very dark things. I was just crying. I'm crying now, but I was crying like a child in the emergency room. I couldn't stop. I was just, my spirit was broken. I didn't know, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to do. No one could really relate to what, because there's no one to really talk to. I could talk to my girlfriend, but she doesn't truly understand because she wasn't where I was at. You don't understand what it's like to be treated like a criminal, even though you've done everything you can to not be treated that way. Just because of the way you look, or just because of the way you dress, that is something that can cause someone to do terrible things. And we hear about all these tragedies about people doing terrible things and going on shooting sprees, for example, or doing things like that. And then all of a sudden you just dismiss that person as lost or disturbed. And I'm not by any means saying condoning that behavior, but at the same time, we could find a way to fix this if you examine why that person did that. Why did that person react the way they reacted? Because time after time they were beat down and profiled and they weren't given the chance, or they were treated the way they shouldn't have been treated. I feel like if you take a chance to step into these people's minds, then you will be able to solve some of these issues, and then that would really help these police really try and treat people differently and kind of disregard the way people look. And the huge problem with police and civilian relations is that it's from a young age in the projects where I grew up, and it's an adversarial situation, and it shouldn't be like that. This isn't the police are supposed to be my adversary. They're public servants. They're supposed to be helping. They're there to help me. But at the same time, watch the show Cops. I know it sounds silly, but take me seriously for a second. Watch the show Cops. Every time that little preliminary, the cop is riding in the car with the camera, what's he say? He's like, "Man, I want to catch bad guys." That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to be catching bad guys. You're supposed to be helping the community. And if you catch someone doing something wrong, you're supposed to be trying to rehabilitate that person. You're not supposed to be trying to catch a bad. This isn't the Wild Wild West. That's what reminds me of the Tamir Rice shooting. Yeah, police are in dangerous situations every day, but did that police officer create a dangerous situation? You got to think about that. That situation could have been helped. That kid could still be alive today, in my opinion. And I'm not saying the job's easy, but you have to learn to approach a situation from. And situations are dangerous, but that situation wasn't dangerous. They should approach the kid from the loudspeaker 100 yards away. You think if that happened in Mayfield Village, that the cop would have rolled up at 50 miles an hour and jumped out of the car shooting while he was rolling? No, they would have cut off a perimeter, and got on the loudspeaker and said, "Hey, sir, get on your knees." Hey, from a loudspeaker, that situation would have been handled very differently. And my time's coming to an end here, but I'm just saying that, and that situation, it changed my life. It prompted me to. I was working for Sherwin-Williams. I got caught up in making good money, and I was just like, I knew this is not. I always wanted to go to law school, and I always wanted to help people, but I thought, hey, my family's struggling. I need to make some money and send some money home, send some money to Cuba. These people are starving. But then then that situation it was weeks and months later, I realized that it was my blessing in disguise. It's what prompted me to, hey, I quit my job at Sherwin-Williams less than 3 months later and applied to law school and took the LSAT all within that period of time. That's really it. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I apologize for getting emotional there, but it's a situation that kind of changed my life forever, really.
Thank you very much, Chris. Chris hasn't mentioned is that he filed a complaint after his treatment at the hands of police with the Civilian Review Agency. Is that the correct name for it, Chris?
Yeah, Civilian Review Board is.
Civilian Review Board. And what happened as a result of that complaint? He told that same story, and it's all in writing. I've seen the report. What did they do?
Nothing happened as a result of it. I filed the complaint kind of late because I was kind of torn. Like I said, I knew the chief of police. I didn't, I was just kind of torn about filing the complaint. I was very distraught, so I didn't know what to do. I filed the complaint late. They called me back and told me that the video cameras on West 6 recycle or reloop after 72 hours. So that happened on a Friday night. By the time you get an appointment, it's not about a week or 2 weeks later. So there goes your investigation there. There's no camera. It's complete. It was just a complete waste of time. I got a call from the internal. I got a call from the police internal affairs. Sorry.
Right.
And they he told me, hey, we looked into it. Cameras relooped. There's nothing we can do. We appreciate your complaint. I just responded by, hey, at least I just wanted to create a paper trail on that particular police officer. Hopefully it'll help someone else in the future, really.
And I think it would be really interesting to look at all the complaints that are made to the Civilian Review Board, because I find when I look at the records that are on their website, a lot of the cases have nothing next to them. Nothing is done. Mr. Frazier, I'm hoping you might have a comment on that topic and a number of others. I've been listening to your radio show, and you've done 7 or 8 on this topic, so I know that he might be able to go on for some time. We're only going to give him 12 minutes now, but I know he'll also respond to questions afterwards. Mansfield Frazier.
First, I want to thank Professor Buchanan for inviting me. And where do you start? If you want to start talking about the complaints, as you said, the Civilian Review Board, they rarely meet, they have no teeth, and they're basically a board that's set up to placate the public. If you want to have accountability, you have the Civilian Review Board that has subpoena power and has sanctioning power. Then you got a real Civilian Review Board. There are some in San Jose has one, San Francisco has one. We've never had, Cincinnati has started one. But so that's just to answer that question. But America's freighted down with its own history. That's why we find ourselves in this situation. The two things you should keep in mind, and Chris talked about that. One is testosterone. Much of what we see is testosterone driven. The other is the blue wall of silence. Calvin Williams, who's a neighbor and a friend of mine, he goes on TV and says, if you see something, say something, it's wrong, there's no snitching. If you see somebody do something wrong, you have an obligation to do it, but the police don't. You talk about no snitching. Your case was bad. The worst case, people think that the Department of Justice came to Cleveland because of the 137 shots. That's not what they tell me. They came because of Edward Henderson, a paranoid schizophrenic that ran from the police because he thought somebody was trying to hurt him. He gets out of his vehicle when he wrecks it, lays prone on the ground, and 4 officers surround him and kick him in the head, beat him horribly. It's caught on a police helicopter camera, but you can't tell which officer actually did what. But they know it was 4 officers involved, and I think it was a number of other officers there. The case went nowhere because none of the officers will testify as to who did what. Now, the thing about police brutality in America, every city that's got a handle on police brutality, you know what happens? Crime goes down. If police brutality goes down, so does crime. And from young people's perspective, from residents' perspective, why should you respect any law that don't respect you? Why should you respect any officer that generally don't respect you? Now, let me be very clear. probably 95% of the police in America are good, decent, hard-working individuals that go out and do a tough job and do it very well. The mistake they make is they protect the 5% that make them look bad. They lie for them, they cover for them, they won't snitch on them. And so as long as you're protecting wrongdoing, you're on, Loomis, I've tried to get him to come on my show. He's not on solid ground, he's on shaky moral ground. And a lot of it's political, because when Councilman Simperman talks about the city, if an incident happens, if the city admits responsibility, they're leaving themselves open for more libel. So they have to say, well, he didn't do anything wrong, because they're trying to protect, as public officials, they have to protect city money. So they have to back the cops up. Maybe they don't like to, so they don't get sued. Now, Councilman Simperman started with, over a decade ago, the Department of Justice came to Cleveland and started this process that we're going through now, consent decree, and after a year, it stopped. Why? Because the politics in Washington changed. When Bush got elected, he told the Department of Justice, stand down. Any cases that weren't pretty far along the pathway, he told the Department of Justice to stand down. Now, when Eric Holder came to town, the Attorney General, one of the first things out of his mouth at the press conference was, he said, for the last 6.5 years, the Department of Justice has been back in business, the Civil Rights Division. It was not in business under Bush. It was a sign on the door. That's all it was. They pursued no investigations. They did absolutely nothing. Now, we're up close. We see this problem in Cleveland. And we get to think that it's a Cleveland problem. No, it's a national problem. It happens all across the United States. And when you talked about police officers, in Canada, they're called peace officers. They get promoted for keeping the peace. In America, you get promoted for kicking ass, taking names, and arresting people. That's how you get your promotions. So of course you want things to go badly so that you can come in, ride in, and save the day. Now, when I talked about testosterone, the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island said, I need more female officers. Females are not testosterone driven. The worst call for a police officer is to go into a domestic violence situation. So you got a guy and his significant other, they're beefing over something. Here comes some other man in his house to try to settle it. He just gets more upset. You send a female in, she quiets it down. Most situations, females can quiet it down. Most situations, and I have a lot of friends that are police officers. And one was a commander, he's a captain. He said a good cop can go his whole career and never have to fire his gun if he's smart. He said if he's real smart, he never even has to pull it. But we have heroes in America, and I won't name the one cop, well, I will, Simone. He's killed 5 people. He's wounded, 6 others. And he's considered a super cop. Now, if we had a good police department, after the second killing, but particularly after the third, the commander should have said, this guy is a danger. Let's put him down at the impound lot. Let's get him off the street before somebody else gets shot. What Simone was a master of is finding the exact situation where he knew he could shoot somebody and couldn't be charged. And he was brilliant at it. Absolutely, because he never been charged. But the commanders never said, my wife's a social worker. She was a retired social worker. When they found a social worker that was doing the job badly and putting families in children family services, putting lives of children in danger, they would take that social worker and move them to the mail room where they couldn't do any more harm. That does not happen with the police department. And to give you an example, these 4 officers that kicked Edward Henderson in the body, in the head, she settled with the city for $600,000, but he went to prison for 3 years for evading officers. And I guess for what? Putting a dent in one officer's boots. But when the officers were taken off of duty, where were the officers sent? To the police academy to train more officers. These are the guys you want training officers. These guys, they know, beat a handcuffed man face down on the ground, and they put them in the training academy. Now just imagine that. Really, just imagine that for a minute. What kind of department does that? There is no accountability. There is really, and another friend of mine at the Fed said, you don't really understand. He said, these guys the blue wall of silence is not there because they like and want to protect each other. The blue wall of silence is there because they all got something on each other. Everyone is scared to tell. If you tell this on me, I'm going to tell this on you. That's the problem we have in America, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. The problem, they're talking about recalling Mayor Jackson, and it's mainly over that he won't fire McGrath, who's Chief McGrath, and Marty Flask, who was his special assistant. And the mayor is saying something that's right. Basically, he's saying, if I had to change these two guys, it wouldn't have made any difference, and he's right. Changing those two guys would not have made any difference in the police department. No police department in the United States has ever healed its own self. None. Show me one. They all can be healed, but only if the Department of Justice really puts them in a consent decree and forces them to change. And you have to bring somebody from outside the department. What really needs to happen if we're going to change, and the media is playing a very critical role in this because the spotlight, cases that normally would have fallen through the cracks, you wouldn't have heard of them. Every week, what was it, 2 days ago, a young man in Baltimore was handcuffed and thrown in the back of a van, and it severed his spinal cord. He's dead. Last week in San Bernardino County, there was a helicopter, news helicopter, 11 officers, really a pack of jackals. Man, he stole a horse. He stole a car and he stole a horse. He falls off the horse. They get him. 10 officers beat this man unmercifully. That was on Thursday. Yesterday, the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, county government gave him $650,000. Within 5 days, they paid him $650,000 because they wanted to go away. They want to get it off the front page. But here's the problem we're going to have. I guarantee you, in the next 7 days, it's going to happen again